Okay. So I guess first we start off with some basic stuff, so
Okay.
we can know who you are a bit more. So if you could tell us how old you are, where you're from, and once again what you do.
I am Aubrey Serr. I am 32 years old, and I come from the United States. I've lived a bunch of places west of the Mississippi. Right now, I'm living in Norman, Oklahoma,
Okay, cool.
and I do the art for Overgrowth and for the comic.
Nice. All right. So like going back, how did you actually start out drawing to begin with?
So I've been drawing more or less since I was a child, and I wasn't particularly good at it, but maybe I was better than my peers. And that's a pretty big motivation when you're a kid, I think. You know, you just like, I'm better than the people I know at something. So it was really encouraging to me, and I just kind of kept at it. Um, but it was really hard for me to imagine making a career out of making art. It just seemed really unrealistic. So I went to college and I got a degree in economics, and wasn't really able to find a job in that. So I ended up doing contract art on the side, and that kind of became my full-time job.
Cool. Um, so you talked a bit about your education there, um, and then the doing works on the side. Can you tell us a bit about what you have been actually doing before you came to Wolfire?
I worked on some iPhone games for a company called Freeverse. One of them was a launch title, probably the best known one. I think it's currently called Moto Chaser. They had to change the name at some point for legal reasons. And I did most of the art for that. I worked on the Xbox Live Arcade port of Marathon to Randall. I worked a little bit for David back when we were still calling Overgrowth Lugaroo 2, way back when. And besides that, I also got a job doing level design for a game called Darkest of Days, and put together a bunch of levels for that. Even though at the time I wasn't really very skilled at level design, I felt like I learned a lot, and certainly anxious to test out some ideas for Overgrowth in terms of professional level design. So that's my professional background, I guess. But I've always wanted to do, even when I worked for on Darkest of Days, that was a relatively small team. I think at its height, it probably had maybe 20 people, including managers and contractors and whatnot. And so it was a very small team by game development standards. Most of the other stuff I've worked on, there've been one or two artists. So I like working on indie projects where I have a lot of influence in and control over my work.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you like? I guess a lot of people. Obviously, we have the fan art forums and stuff like that, and in general, the some of the blog posts earlier, like we've had a lot of people in the community that are actually pretty good at art and interested in art, including me. So
yeah.
Since you are actually in the industry now, technically,
Right.
for a while at least, how would you say, if you would give tips to how to actually get into the industry and start earning money off of your work, what would you give for tips?
One of the things that was the most critical for me was I started checking out this online community called Polycount. And that's where I learned how to do most of my 3D art. And it's kind of, I don't know, the community has a lot of tough love where you face harsh criticisms. But getting your art out in front of other people is really, really critical. And I think that's probably the single most important thing. Get your art out in front of people. Don't take critiques too seriously, and just work on your craft. Try to make your art as good as possible. And give other people feedback, because one of the things that's interesting is that over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so that I've been attempting to make video games, a lot of the people that I started out, we were all just trying to learn how to make games together. Now, a lot of those people are professionals and are very good at what they do. So they're great people to know. And we still help each other out. Mm. So I think a lot of people, they might come to an online community or see a person, that's whose art they admire and say, oh, I wish I was that person. But, if I can get to know that person, then I'll have a way into the industry. But it's really a lot more important to get to know the people who are at your same skill level and to help each other become better artists, because that forms a bond that is really important.
Yeah, I guess trying to get to learn like a person that's already good, it has to be mutual, that you both have to be able to give something to one another, I guess.
Right. It's just I try to help people out as much as I can and give good feedback, but when it comes right down to it, I'm very busy making art for Overgrowth, and I just don't have the same amount of time that I used to have to devote to, helping people out in the community.
Yeah. But when it comes to, as you were talking about, good artists, I guess you have had your guys that you have been inspired by, people that you look up to and whose art you like especially much.
Yeah, it's hard to pick out an individual person whose art that I really like, just think is the end all be all. But I've looked at a lot of different kinds of art that I find inspirational. If I had to pick one artist, I really like H.R. Giger. It's not really in the same style as Overgrowth, but I think that he's probably one of the more important living artists. Of course, classical art from Rembrandt is one of my favorite painters. I think his especially in person, his paintings are amazing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of I think it's Sid Mead, the guy who did the designs for Blade Runner and whatnot, is a big inspiration. So as you get more into modern concept art for games, I find those less inspirational, because they always seem to be kind of in the same style. And what I like about a lot of the other art is that it's really good, but in its own style. So I try not to follow trends in game design concept art too closely. I'm always trying to learn, but it's really easy to kind of get stuck just following a trend.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have your own style, or have you kind of looked at other people's drawings and kind of taken things and made your own out of that, or?
I think that I certainly tried to do that early on, but what happens is that you start to find after a while that even if you try to copy other people, you can't. And the difference between what you do and when you try to copy a person and what that person's actual output is that's your style, right? Like you can't really get rid of your own personal style. And so I've tried a lot of different things. The other part of personal style is you make stuff and you're like, oh, I kind of like that, but then you kind of miss making art a certain way. So I've certainly come into that a number of times. Like recently I was trying to use the texture brushes, and it's like there's some things that I really liked about that, but I don't know if I'm going to continue working that way, because I just don't find it quite as satisfying. But I might introduce aspects of what I've learned into my personal style.
Yeah, I guess it's always important to try new things and always learn and get better.
I think that that's the main thing as an artist, is always try to get better, to always try to produce art look at the stuff that you like, try to emulate what you like. Always put your art out there and try to get feedback.
Cool.
Man, some of this art in the slideshow is really old.
Yeah, it's my concept art folder for Overgrowth. I just threw a bunch of stuff in there. It's fine though. I think I like it.
It's kind of fun to see this really old art. Some of the stuff is like 8 years old or 7 years old.
Wow.
Like this rat hut that's on the screen now.
That's crazy. I didn't know. Wow. Has it been that long or? Wow.
I think some of this is the very first art that I did for David. So it's at least 6, I think. 6 years old.
Huh. Cool. Okay. Anyways, I'm kind of curious about. This really isn't related to anything in particular, but how do you actually work best? Like, what's your best working environment? Do you like music or, yeah?
Sometimes I'll listen to music or books on tape. I find that what I listen to doesn't really influence what my ability to work very much, but just drawing or painting, like I tend to get a little bit bored sometimes, so it's good to have like a book on tape so that because I love to read, and like sometimes I'll want to surf and read the internet instead of work, so it's better if that part of my brain gets occupied by something else.
Okay.
And I like working at home, but you know, I don't know. I could work in an office too. It's nice to be able to take breaks when you feel tired instead of being stuck somewhere. So,
yeah. How do you feel that like that works in general? Because working from home, it can often be, you know,
it's hard.
there are
It takes some discipline.
so.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of distractions and it takes discipline. But at the same time, the opposite is true. If I feel like working, I can immediately start working and get something done quickly while I feel motivated. Whereas if you're in an office, sometimes you'll just kind of poke and prod at your work for hours and not make any real progress. It's still, I think it's important to have personal discipline when it comes to working at home. And sometimes that's difficult. I mean, I think that's one of the main advantages of going and being in an office is because even if you don't feel like working, sometimes you can still get some work done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talking about work, do you think, or what do you think is the most interesting thing about working with Wolfire? Like, I'm guessing you really enjoy working at Wolfire?
Yeah, it's awesome. I really like, it's really a lot of fun. It's awesome to be able to work on my own ideas and to kind of be in charge of my own little domain of things. Although I think for me, currently the most exciting aspect is kind of the non-art type stuff. Like, for example, I was really excited to learn about YouTube and making videos for YouTube and how all of that works in terms of user views and whatnot, and like how it helps sales. I mean, it sounds kind of lame, but hey, I actually make all the art for the game too, so I don't think it's that lame. I mean, if I was just, I think a lot of indie games fail because they have bad marketing. So, and really games that should succeed. Like, there's really cool games out there that have bad marketing and they are not as successful as they should be. So, to me, I think that's a really interesting aspect of being an indie that you don't usually deal with at all if you're working at a bigger company.
Yeah.
And I like having control over that aspect of like, well, what face do we put forward as a company, right? Because a lot of companies just have some kind of generic front man, and it's boring and kind of dishonest seeming. So I like to talk to people. I like talking to people in IRC about the game because I think it's important.
Yeah.
It's important to talk to people one-on-one about the game so that they know there's a real human being working on it.
Yeah, and because you can too, because those big companies, often the employees aren't allowed to talk about the game outside of...
Right, they're not allowed to talk about it at all. They hire some outside company that then doesn't do any community outreach at all. Like, you'll contract out some advertising firm to handle that stuff for you, and they won't even do a good job.
Yeah.
So...
I think what Wolfire and you guys are building here with the community and all that, it's really great. It's actually so much fun to just follow the development of the game, which I think shows because a lot of people who actually pre-ordered the game and come into the pre-order forums are like, I've been following this game for like years. And,
right.
Like they wouldn't follow it for years if they didn't find
right, if it was boring.
The game. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's been educational for us how much work it's been to make a video game of the quality that we're dedicated to making. And also, you know, it's just really, like I've said it before, it sounds like a cliche, but like the fans really are one of the most important things about game development. Because the people who help us and support us make it possible. And it sounds cheesy, but it's totally true. And, you know, I'm kind of torn because on one hand, I want to get as much work done as possible. But on the other hand, I want to interact with those people and let them know that I appreciate everything that they've done to help us out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So starting to wrap this up a little bit, what do you think... personally, for yourself, what will you do in the future? What do you think you'll move on to doing?
More games for Overgrowth. I mean, for Wolfire.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any backup plan at the moment. I think that if we keep at it and make the kind of game we want to make, then people are going to like it, and we'll probably gain more people who appreciate our work. And there's a lot of game ideas that I would like to work on. Both David and I regularly talk about what kind of games we would like to work on after Overgrowth. So I think that's just the plan, and make sweet games.
Awesome. That's great to hear, because I love your art, man.
Thanks.
Okay, so the final question that everyone here gets. If you were a character in the Overgrowth universe, what would you be, and what would you be doing?
That one's tough. Well, it's a little bit boring, but I think I might be a rabbit character, and I would chill in the sun.
Nice.
I mean, wander around in the forests and eat grass, I guess. Little leaves.
Stuff rabbits do, I guess.
The stuff rabbits do.
Nice. Just enjoying life. Cool. So before we go, I guess you have something to show, don't you?
Yeah, I sent some stuff over there, so...
Yeah, let's take a look at... shall we look at the image first?
Yeah, let's look at the painting.
Okay, so this is an image that you sent that I hadn't seen before, and you were relieved to finally have found something.
Yeah, I was digging through my archives. So yeah, this is the Swordmaker that's going to be in the comic, and you've actually seen him. He was one of the characters in that old concept art that was actually in the slideshow rotation. So same guy.
Is the blacksmith?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's one of my favorite concept arts, actually, and I really like this one as well.
Yeah, so it's meant to be the same guy, and so there's some things that are a little bit loose and about this image a little bit weak, but I think it's cool. I really like just the ambiance. I think I got it pretty close to what I was going for.
Yeah, I think it's really great. And actually that brings me to another question. How much of your stuff do you actually show off to the public?
Almost all of it. For a while I had a backlog of stuff that I hadn't shown anybody, but most of that stuff has been worked through. So I have very little in reserve. I was really happy to find this piece just floating around because it's a pretty high quality. I spent quite a bit of time on it, like most of a day at least. And I was testing out some of those techniques using texture brushes on this. So it's kind of an interesting hybrid between this and the other piece that I did using that technique that I did the time lapse for of Janner on the beach.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really nice image. And since you talked about, you mentioned the comic before, what's the status on that?
I haven't worked on it in a couple weeks, but there's every once in a while I'll do a little bit. It kind of comes in fits and starts. Like when I get really excited about the comic book, sometimes I'll do a substantial amount of work on it in one sitting. So I'll take 5 or 6 hours and I'll finish a step on like 10 different pages. But the update is really, really big, so it's slow going. I think at this point the update's going to be about as big as the comic is to this point.
Whoa, that's nice. I'm looking forward to that.
So that's one of the reasons. I mean, like, there were patches in the comic coming to where we are now where it went months without an update. So it was not exactly, fast in terms of getting the comic done. And this is a lot slower. And I apologize to everybody. But I think that, a lot of the criticisms that I've had from the comic over the years, I've been trying to address them in terms of like just making a better story. So I hope that I can get more feedback in terms of my storytelling ability. I don't think I'm a genius when it comes to that, but more feedback's always better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really looking forward to the comic update. I really enjoy the comic, so
yeah, it should be cool.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to the other. To the other image. You also have this Raider sculpt.
Yep.
So this is a sculpt of the concept art that you gave to us last week. This is kind of a first we get the concept art and then we get the sculpt.
So yeah, I'm going to have all of the stuff together in a art asset overview, but this is just a little preview of where I'm at on the asset so far. So this is basically the finished version of the high poly sculpt before it gets baked down to the game resolution model. And I think this fits the concept art pretty well. It's a bit lumpy. It's a technical term when your sculpt doesn't look good, but I think that in the actual game it should look fine.
I like that you have a technical term for when the sculpt doesn't look good.
Yeah, I could probably put more work into it and smooth out the lumpiness and make things a little bit more defined. But in the actual game engine, you don't really see it, and it's important just to get stuff finished so that we can move on. You'd rather have like 2, 3 characters that look good rather than 2 characters that look good, and that's basically. You can put more work into it, but it doesn't make them look any better.
Yeah, I see. It's looking really great now, though. And this character in general is so cool. He's kind of a change from the previous characters because he has some actual special equipment, which I like.
Yeah, I wanted to I like the Raiders. I've gone back and forth in terms of the style for the characters for a while, but I think what is actually going to stick is there's a word to describe kind of cliched character design as reflexive, right? Like, what people want and just giving them exactly what they want. So like most video game concept art is 100% reflexive. That's why you get Space Marines that are bald and have, giant shoulder pads, because that's what people want to see. And it gets kind of boring. So for Overgrowth, I kind of overreacted, I think, to some of that, to some extent, and tried to make characters that didn't have a lot of these reflexive design elements, like, just a detail everywhere or big shoulder pads or whatever. And so I think this is a nice mix right in the middle, because without those cliches or the reflexive design elements, people don't get anything that they want. And they don't even understand what the character is supposed to be, or because they can't interpret the design language. So so you want to include elements that people can relate to. And this is an attempt to go half and half.
Yeah, I actually agree that I think it's actually very important to give people what they expect. Otherwise, as you said, they will feel kind of alienated. They won't understand the game.
Yeah, and they're just you introduce people to new ideas by taking old things that you know they like and then showing how those things relate to the things that you think are cool, so that there's some kind of context and connection between you and the viewer or the player.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that I'm settling back into a very concrete kind of approach to character design for Overgrowth, and I think it's going to be cool.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and I guess that's the end of the show, man.
Great. Thanks for having me. It's totally awesome, and I love the show.
Yeah, thanks for being on, and thanks for being interviewed by me. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Of course, if you can draw, if you can't draw still, post your anthropomorphic horses in the fan art watch in the fan art forum, and we'll take a look at that next week.
Thanks again, everyone.
See ya.